The Grand Meridian Hotel stood like a beacon of elegance against the Seattle skyline, its marble facade gleaming under the afternoon sun. Crystal chandeliers visible through the towering windows promised the kind of luxury that most people only dreamed about. I had driven past this building hundreds of times over the years, watching it transform from an aging property into one of the most prestigious hotels on the West Coast. Today, I walked through those revolving doors wearing a simple navy dress I had picked up at a department store sale 3 years ago. My shoes were comfortable flats, practical for the long day ahead. I carried no designer handbag, wore no expensive jewelry. To anyone watching, I looked exactly like what my family had always believed me to be, the struggling older sister who had never quite figured out how to succeed. The lobby was already buzzing with wedding preparations. White roses cascaded from every surface, their sweet fragrance mixing with the subtle notes of the hotel's signature scent. A string quartet rehearsed in the corner near the grand staircase. Staff members in crisp uniforms moved with practiced efficiency, adjusting flower arrangements and polishing already spotless surfaces. I recognized several relatives milling about, their designer outfits and loud voices marking them as members of the Henderson wedding party. My mother's side of the family had always been particular about appearances. Success was measured in square footage, car brands, and vacation destinations that could be mentioned casually at dinner parties. Eleanor. My cousin Patricia spotted me first. Her eyebrows rose so high they nearly disappeared into her professionally highlighted hairline. "What are you doing here?" Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the lobby noise like a knife through silk. Well, look who's trying to crash the wedding." My younger sister Victoria descended the grand staircase in a cloud of white organza, her wedding dress rustling with each dramatic step. She had always known how to make an entrance. Behind her trailed her maid of honor, our cousin Stephanie, and 3 bridesmaids I vaguely recognized from Victoria's sorority days. "She can't even afford a room here," Victoria continued, her voice carrying across the lobby with practiced projection. I specifically didn't send her an invitation for a reason. The relatives gathered closer, sensing the kind of family drama that would fuel gossip for months. My Aunt Margaret emerged from the hotel restaurant, her husband Gerald in tow. My mother appeared from the elevator bank, her face arranged in that particular expression of disappointed resignation she had perfected over the years of looking at me. "Victoria, darling, don't let her ruin your special day," my mother said, placing a manicured hand on my sister's arm. "Security can handle this." "Already on it," Victoria said, snapping her fingers toward the concierge desk. "Can someone please remove this woman? She's not on the guest list." A security guard began making his way across the lobby, his expression professionally neutral. The string quartet had stopped playing. Even the hotel staff had paused their preparations to watch the unfolding scene. "I told you she would try something like this," Aunt Margaret said, shaking her head. She's always been jealous of Victoria's success. I stood quietly in the center of the lobby, hands clasped in front of me, watching my family arrange themselves into a familiar formation. Victoria at the center, radiating righteous indignation. My mother flanking her right side, providing maternal support. Aunt Margaret and Uncle Gerald anchoring the left, ready to provide backup commentary. Cousins and bridesmaids filling in the gaps, a chorus of disapproval. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" Victoria hissed, stepping closer to me. "This is the Grand Meridian, the most exclusive hotel in Seattle. My wedding is going to be in Seattle Magazine. And you show up looking like that." She gestured at my simple dress with obvious disdain. "I worked for 3 years to book this venue," she continued. 3 years on a waiting list. "And you think you can just walk in off the street?" "Victoria, I started." "Don't." She held up her hand, the massive diamond on her engagement ring catching the chandelier light. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You weren't invited. You've never supported my relationship with Marcus. You didn't come to my engagement party, my bridal shower, or my bachelorette weekend in Cabo." "I wasn't invited to any of those either," I said quietly, "because you would have brought down the whole atmosphere." Victoria's voice rose another octave. Do you know how hard it is to explain to people that my older sister lives in some tiny apartment and works some mysterious job that she can never actually explain? It's humiliating. My mother stepped forward, placing herself between us. Eleanor, please. Just go. Don't make a scene. I'm not the one making a scene, I pointed out. See. Aunt Margaret chimed in. She always has to have the last word, just like her father. The mention of my father sent a familiar ripple through the group. He had passed away 8 years ago, leaving behind a complicated legacy that my mother's family had never fully accepted. They had never approved of him, a quiet man who preferred books to business deals, who had worked in real estate development without ever achieving the flashy success they valued.
Mom.
The security guard had reached our group, his hand hovering near the radio on his belt. I'm going to need to ask you to leave the premises. On whose authority? I asked calmly. On mine, Victoria snapped. I'm the bride. This is my wedding venue. And you are trespassing. The security guard looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, if you're not a registered guest or on the event list. She's definitely not on any list, my mother confirmed. Please escort her out, preferably through a back entrance. We don't need photographs of this. I remained where I stood, watching the scene unfold with the strange detachment that comes from having experienced similar moments throughout my entire life. The family closing ranks, the automatic assumption of my failure, the complete certainty that I couldn't possibly belong in any space they occupied. You know what the saddest part is? Victoria said, turning to address her bridesmaids as much as me. I actually used to look up to her. When we were kids, Eleanor was the smart one. Everyone said she would do great things. She laughed, a sharp sound without warmth. And look how that turned out. 34 years old. No husband. No career anyone can identify. Probably still driving that ancient car Dad left her. The Honda still runs fine, I said. The Honda. Victoria rolled her eyes. Meanwhile, Marcus and I just ordered matching Teslas. But sure, Eleanor, tell me more about your reliable Honda. The bridesmaids giggled. Aunt Margaret nodded approvingly at Victoria's wit. My mother studied the ceiling as if hoping to find divine intervention in the crystal chandelier. Mrs. Henderson? A young woman in a hotel uniform approached my mother hesitantly. The florist is asking about the additional arrangements for the reception. Should I tell them to proceed with the upgrade? Yes, my mother said, waving her hand dismissively. Whatever Victoria wants. This is her day. The upgrade is another $12,000, the staff member said carefully. Did I stutter? My mother pulled out a credit card. Victoria deserves the best. Unlike some people, she's actually made something of her life. The transaction completed, my mother turned back to the security situation at hand. Why is she still here? I thought I asked for discretion. Ma'am, I need to check with my manager before. The security guard started. Your manager?
Victoria interrupted. Fine.
Get your manager. Get the hotel owner for all I care. Anyone who can remove my sister from my wedding venue. Actually, I said, speaking for the first time in several minutes, I think the manager is already on his way. Every head turned toward the elevator bank, where a distinguished man in an impeccable suit was indeed making his way across the lobby. Jonathan Wright had been the general manager of the Grand Meridian for the past 4 years. He was excellent at his job, professional, discreet, and completely dedicated to maintaining the hotel's reputation for exceptional service. What is happening here? Jonathan asked, taking in the scene with a practiced eye. Is there a problem with the Henderson wedding preparations? Yes, Victoria said, stepping forward with the confidence of a woman who had never been denied anything in her life. This woman, she gestured at me with obvious distaste, has shown up uninvited and is refusing to leave. She's my sister, unfortunately, but she's absolutely not welcome at my wedding. I need her removed immediately. Jonathan's expression remained professionally neutral as he turned to look at me. Something flickered in his eyes. A question, perhaps, or a request for guidance. Ms. Anderson, he said carefully, how would you like us to handle your family's reservations? The lobby went absolutely silent. Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times without producing any sound. My mother's credit card, which she had been tucking back into her wallet, slipped from her fingers and clattered to the marble floor. Aunt Margaret grabbed Uncle Gerald's arms so tightly that he winced. "I'm sorry," Victoria finally managed. "What did you just call her?" Jonathan looked genuinely confused by the question. "Ms. Anderson? Ms. Eleanor Anderson." He gestured toward me with obvious respect. "The owner of this hotel?" "The owner," my mother repeated flatly. "That's impossible," Aunt Margaret declared. "Eleanor doesn't own anything. She lives in a tiny apartment in Capitol Hill. She drives a Honda." "I do live in Capitol Hill," I confirmed. "And I do drive a Honda. It was my father's car, and it has sentimental value." "But you also own this hotel," Jonathan added, still looking confused by the apparent controversy. "You've owned the Grand Meridian for the past 4 years, ever since you completed the acquisition and renovation, along with the other 7 properties in the Anderson Hospitality portfolio." 8 properties, I corrected gently. "We closed on the San Francisco location last month." 8 properties, Jonathan repeated, nodding. "Of course. Congratulations on that acquisition, by the way. The team is very excited about the expansion." Victoria looked like she might actually faint. One of her bridesmaids had the presence of mind to grab a chair from the nearby seating area and push it toward her. My sister sank into it, her wedding dress billowing around her like a deflating cloud. "This is a joke," she said. "This has to be a joke. Eleanor, if you hired some actor to pretend." "Ms. Henderson," Jonathan interrupted, his tone cooling noticeably, "I can assure you that I am the actual general manager of this hotel, and Ms. Anderson is very much the actual owner. She personally oversaw the renovation 4 years ago. She approved every design decision, every staffing hire, every operational policy. The Grand Meridian exists in its current form because of her vision and investment." "But how?" My mother had finally found her voice. "Where would Eleanor get the money to buy a hotel? Her father left her nothing. Just that stupid car and some boxes of papers." "Actually," I said, "Dad left me quite a bit more than that. He left me his real estate portfolio. 23 properties that he had quietly acquired over 30 years of careful investment. Properties that he bought, renovated, and managed without ever telling anyone in the family because he knew exactly how you would react." "That's impossible," Aunt Margaret insisted. "Richard was a failure. He never accomplished anything." "Richard was private," I corrected. "There's a difference. He didn't need to talk about his success at dinner parties. He didn't need to impress anyone with his car or his vacation destinations. He just quietly built something real, something lasting, and when he passed away, he left it all to me with very specific instructions." I reached into my practical handbag and pulled out a worn leather journal, my father's handwriting covering every page. He wrote it all down. Every property, every investment strategy, every lesson he wanted me to learn. He spent the last year of his life teaching me how to manage the portfolio, how to grow it responsibly, how to identify opportunities that others overlooked. "Why you?" Victoria demanded, some of her characteristic fire returning. "Why not Mom? Why not me?" "Because you would have sold everything and spent the money on things that don't last," I said simply. His words, not mine. He wanted the portfolio to grow, to provide for future generations, to create opportunities for people who work hard and dream big. He didn't want it turned into handbags and vacation homes. My mother looked stricken. "Richard said that? About me?" "About the family in general," I said, and I meant it as kindly as I could. "He loved you, Mom. He loved all of us. But he also saw clearly how this family values appearance over substance. He wanted to protect his legacy from that." Jonathan cleared his throat diplomatically. "Ms. Anderson, would you like me to give you some privacy with your family? I can have the staff clear the lobby." "That won't be necessary," I said. "But I would like to see the event coordinator, please. And someone from accounting." "Of course." Jonathan pulled out his phone and sent a quick message. "They'll be here momentarily. Is there anything else you need?" Victoria suddenly stood up from her chair, her face cycling through several emotions before settling on something that looked almost like hope. Eleanor.
Ellie.
You're not actually going to cancel my wedding, are you? I mean, I know I said some things, but it's my wedding day. You wouldn't ruin my wedding day. I'm not going to cancel your wedding, I said. The relief that washed over Victoria's face was almost painful to watch. Oh, thank God. I knew you wouldn't. I mean, I know we haven't always been close, but we're still sisters and… I'm not going to cancel your wedding, I repeated. I'm going to attend your wedding, as I originally intended when I drove here this afternoon. But I didn't invite you, Victoria said, confusion replacing relief. No, you didn't.
But I wanted to come anyway.
I wanted to watch my little sister get married. I wanted to see you happy. I wanted to be part of your special day, even if I had to stand in the back and slip out before the reception. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, genuine tears, not the performative kind she had mastered in high school drama club.
Why?
After everything I've said about you? After how I've treated you? Because you're my sister, I said simply. Because I remember when you used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Because I remember teaching you to ride a bike. Because despite everything, I still love you. The event coordinator arrived with a tablet, followed by a woman from accounting with a laptop. They positioned themselves near Jonathan, awaiting instructions. The Henderson wedding, I said. I'd like to see the billing details, please. The accountant pulled up the information, turning her screen so I could see. The total was staggering, well into six figures for the venue, catering, flowers, music, and various premium upgrades my mother had been authorizing all week. Who is responsible for payment? I asked. The initial deposit was paid by a Mr. Marcus Wellington, the accountant said. The groom. But subsequent charges have been going to a credit card belonging to Mrs. Patricia Henderson. She glanced at my mother, the bride's mother. How much has my mother paid so far? The accountant checked her records. Approximately $87,000, including the flower upgrade from earlier today. I turned to my mother, who had gone very pale. Mom, can you actually afford this? My mother's silence was answer enough. Aunt Margaret stepped in with practiced defensiveness. Your mother wanted to give Victoria the wedding she deserves. Family takes care of family. Family takes care of family, I repeated. Interesting philosophy. I turned back to the accountant. Transfer all current and future charges for the Henderson wedding to my personal account. Every expense, past, present, and anything that comes up between now and the end of the reception. The accountant's fingers flew across her keyboard. Done, Ms. Anderson. My mother made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Victoria stared at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before, something approaching genuine gratitude, mixed with profound shame. You don't have to do that, Victoria whispered. I know I don't have to. I want to. Consider it my wedding gift. Eleanor. My mother stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I squeezed her hand gently. But I do have some conditions. The wariness returned to everyone's faces. Of course there would be conditions. In this family, nothing came without strings attached. First, I said, I want an actual invitation to the wedding. Not just permission to attend, an invitation. With my name on it. Eleanor Anderson, sister of the bride. Victoria nodded quickly.
Done.
Of course. You should have been invited from the beginning. Second, I want a seat at the family table during the reception. Not in the back. Not at the overflow table with distant cousins. At the main table, where I belong. Yes, my mother said immediately. Absolutely. Third, I want us to start having honest conversations. About Dad. About his legacy. About why this family decided I was a failure without ever actually asking what I was doing with my life. This condition met with more hesitation. Aunt Margaret shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Gerald suddenly found the chandelier fascinating. My mother looked down at her shoes. I spent 8 years executing my father's vision. I continued. 8 years growing his portfolio, hiring staff, creating jobs, building something real. And not once did anyone in this family ask me how I was doing. Not once did anyone wonder if maybe, just maybe, I might be okay. We assumed. My mother started, then stopped. You assumed I was failing because I didn't look like I was succeeding. Because I didn't drive the right car, or wear the right clothes, or go to the right parties. You measured me by your standards and found me wanting without ever considering that I might have different standards entirely. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, probably ruining her professional makeup. You're right. You're absolutely right. I was so awful to you, and you didn't deserve any of it. No, I agreed. I didn't. But I'm not doing this for an apology. I'm doing this because I want things to be different going forward. I want to actually have a family, not just relatives who tolerate me when they have to. Jonathan stepped forward, sensing that the most dramatic moments had passed. Ms. Anderson, would you like me to arrange for your usual suite? The penthouse is available. I considered the offer. Actually, I think I'll take a standard room. Something comfortable, but not extravagant. I'm here for my sister's wedding, not to make a statement. Of course. Jonathan nodded to a staff member, who hurried off to arrange the accommodations. Wait, Aunt Margaret said, seemingly unable to contain herself any longer. You said 8 properties. You own 8 hotels like this one. Not all like this one, I said. The Grand Meridian is the flagship. The others vary: boutique hotels, historic renovations, a resort property in Oregon. Each one has its own character. And you run all of them? Uncle Gerald asked, genuine curiosity breaking through his usual reserve. I oversee them. I have excellent managers at each property, like Jonathan here, who handle the day-to-day operations. My job is vision, strategy, and making sure we stay true to my father's principles. What principles? Victoria asked. Quality over flash. Sustainability over waste. Treating employees like family. Giving guests an experience they'll remember, not just a room to sleep in. I smiled, thinking of all the hours I had spent with my father's journal, absorbing his philosophy. Dad believed that success should be measured by what you create, not what you consume. He built his portfolio quietly because he didn't want the recognition. He wanted the results. My mother sank into a nearby chair, looking suddenly older than her 62 years. I never knew any of this. All those years married to him, and I never knew. He tried to tell you, I said gently, but you didn't want to hear it. You wanted him to be someone he wasn't, someone who cared about the same things you cared about. And when he couldn't be that person, you stopped listening. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. My mother nodded slowly, accepting the truth of it. The lobby had gradually filled with wedding guests arriving for the ceremony. They hovered at a respectful distance, clearly aware that something significant was happening, but unsure of the details. Victoria's fiancé Marcus emerged from the elevator, looking handsome in his tuxedo and completely confused by the scene before him.
Victoria?
Is everything okay? Someone said there was a problem with your sister? Victoria crossed to him, taking his hands. Marcus, this is my sister Eleanor. She's going to be at our wedding after all. Marcus looked from Victoria to me, clearly trying to read the situation. That's great. You said she probably wouldn't come. I didn't invite her, Victoria admitted, shame coloring her cheeks. I should have. I was wrong. She also owns this hotel, Aunt Margaret added, unable to resist. And 7 others. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry, what? It's a long story, I said, stepping forward to shake his hand. The short version is that appearances can be deceiving, and I'm very happy to finally meet the man my sister loves. Marcus shook my hand with obvious bewilderment. Likewise. I think we should probably get ready for the ceremony, Victoria said, glancing at the ornate clock above the concierge desk. Guests are arriving. You're right. I stepped back, giving them space. I'll get settled in my room and see you in the ballroom. As I turned to go, Victoria caught my arm. Eleanor, wait. I turned back to face my sister. Really face her, perhaps for the first time in years.
Thank you, she said.
Not just for paying for everything. For coming. For wanting to be here, even after how I treated you. For being a better sister than I deserve. You don't have to deserve love, I said. That's kind of the whole point of family. Victoria pulled me into a hug, her wedding dress crinkling between us. I felt her tears dampen my shoulder and hugged her back just as tightly. When we separated, my mother was there, her own eyes wet.
I'm sorry, Eleanor, for all of it, for not seeing you,
for not asking, for assuming the worst. I know, Mom. I hugged her too, feeling something loosen in my chest that had been tight for years. We can do better. All of us. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. I settled into my room, a comfortable standard suite, as requested, and changed into a slightly nicer dress I had brought just in case. The ceremony was beautiful, Victoria radiant as she walked down the aisle toward a clearly smitten Marcus. At the reception, I sat at the family table as promised. Conversations that had previously skirted around me now included me directly. I told stories about my father, about his philosophy, about the early days of learning to manage the portfolio. Family members who had ignored me for years suddenly wanted to know everything. Halfway through dinner, Victoria stood to give a toast. She thanked the usual people, Marcus, her parents, her bridesmaids. Then she paused, looking directly at me. I also want to thank my sister Eleanor, she said, her voice steady but emotional. Earlier today, I said some things I'm deeply ashamed of. I dismissed her, mocked her, and tried to have her removed from this venue. What I didn't know, what I had never bothered to find out, was that Eleanor actually owns this hotel. And 7 others. And probably half of Seattle, for all I know. Laughter rippled through the room. I smiled, shaking my head slightly. But that's not why I'm thanking her, Victoria continued. I'm thanking her because even after all of that, even after years of being excluded and ignored by her own family, she still wanted to be here. She still wanted to celebrate my happiness. She still loved me enough to stay when anyone else would have walked away. Victoria raised her glass. To Eleanor, the best sister I've been too blind to appreciate. I promise to do better. To Eleanor, the room echoed. I stood, glass in hand, and nodded at my sister. To family, I said, the one we're born with and the one we choose to build. After the toast, Marcus's father approached me with a business card. Anderson Hospitality? I'm in commercial development. We should talk. I'd like that, I said, tucking the card away. The party continued late into the night. I danced with my mother for the first time in decades. I listened to Aunt Margaret apologize with varying degrees of sincerity. I watched Victoria and Marcus take their first dance as a married couple, their faces glowing with happiness. Around midnight, I stepped onto the hotel balcony for some fresh air. The Seattle skyline sparkled in the distance, city lights reflecting off the waters of the Sound. I thought about my father, about his quiet determination, about the legacy he had trusted me to protect and grow. He would be proud of you, you know. I turned to find my mother joining me on the balcony, 2 glasses of champagne in hand.
Dad.
I accepted the glass she offered.
Hmm.
She leaned against the railing, looking out at the view. He always said you were the only one who understood him. I thought he meant it as an insult. Now I realize it was the highest compliment he could give. I miss him every day, I said quietly. I know. My mother was silent for a moment. I wasted so many years wanting him to be different. Wanting you to be different. When all along, you were both exactly who you were supposed to be. It's not too late to start over, I said. My mother turned to look at me, really look at me, perhaps for the first time since I was a child. No, she agreed. It's not too late. We clinked our glasses together and stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights dance across the water. When the wedding finally wound down and the last guest departed, I walked through the empty ballroom one final time. The staff was already beginning to clean up, moving with the efficient grace that Jonathan had trained into them. Everything to your satisfaction, Ms. Anderson? Jonathan appeared at my elbow. Perfect, I said. As always. Thank the team for me. I will. He hesitated. If I may say so, I'm glad things worked out with your family. I smiled. So am I, Jonathan. So am I. Walking back through the lobby toward the elevator, I passed the spot where I had stood earlier that day, surrounded by family members who had been so certain of my failure. The marble floors gleamed under the chandelier light. Fresh flowers had already been placed for tomorrow's guests. My father's voice echoed in my memory. Success isn't about what people think of you. It's about what you build, what you protect, and who you become in the process. I pressed the elevator button and waited, thinking about all the conversations that would come in the days ahead. The rebuilding of relationships. The slow work of becoming a real family instead of just people who shared DNA. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, pressed the button for my floor, and watched the lobby disappear from view. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to grow. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt like I truly belonged. The doors closed, and the elevator began its quiet ascent.